So we need to talk about your genetic trait survey and how you know what these traits mean, what trait you or whoever you're surveying has, and we need to get some data filled in. So let's do that. We're going to also, real quick, talk about the spreadsheet that you'll be working in. A couple things about it. So for one, you've got this big blue table. That's what you're going to be filling out. The table has all the traits here, and it has this that says expressions and codes. So what that means is expression means how something shows up in you. So for handedness, you might be right-handed or you might be left-handed. Each expression has a code that goes with it for our purposes. You're going to be filling in a bunch of ones and zeros into this table. So you'll just look at which code number goes with the expression and you'll fill that number in. Okay. You'll notice the spreadsheet down at the bottom. Part of it's covered up by some of my tools here for video recording. But you'll notice that there's a tab that says data, and there's one that says, I just realized too, this is backwards. Well, it'll just be backwards. And the other one says graph and questions. So the graph and questions we're going to work on next week. Don't worry about that. Today, this video is really just going to focus on the data tab and getting that filled in correctly. So let's get started. We're going to look at the trait survey here. Get things set up right. All right, so what is a genetically inherited trait anyway? It's any feature or characteristic of a person that was inherited from a parent through their DNA. So hopefully you know that we have DNA inside of us. DNA is sort of like a blueprint or like a code for who we are, for what we look like, for a lot of different things about us. And so, for instance, the example I always use is my hair color is like the same hair color as my dad's. So my hair color is an inherited trait from my dad. All right. You may have some traits that you recognize that you inherited from a parent, or maybe if you don't have anything quite like that, you at least might know a family or in your family or whatever, where there's a trait that seems to be that family all has this particular trait. One thing to mention is that a lot of traits have wide ranges of physical appearances, like hair color, which I already mentioned, eye color, and then some things can also be changed by interacting with the environment, like skin color. We're not focusing on these really complicated things, okay? These are complicated and they're good and they're important things to think about, but for us, as we're just getting started, we want to think about super basic things. And so the traits that we're going to look at really only have two main ways that they express. The only word that I'm covering up there is have. Either you're right-handed or you're left-handed, for instance. And I understand some of you may think that we'll talk more about that one in a minute. But the traits we're going to look at today have two main ways that they express. One other thing before we jump into the traits is I want you to realize that not all traits are genetically inherited. We also have these things called acquired traits, which are traits that we don't inherit, things that we're not born with. The example I always use is my tattoos. I have a couple of tattoos. Guess what? I wasn't born with them. I didn't inherit tattoos from my parents. I acquired them later on in my life. Okay, so there are a lot of different examples of that. The other example here is a finger. So if you ever break your pinky finger, sometimes it'll remain bent in a funny way. I have been lucky to not break any fingers, so I can't show you, but you probably know what I'm talking about. So anyway, today we want to focus on the inherited traits. So the first trait is handedness. It's an easy one. Which hand do you write with? Are you right-handed? Are you left-handed? Which one are you? Now, some of you may say, but Miss Richard, I'm ambidextrous. I can write with both hands. Well, if you can write with both hands, that's cool. You probably prefer one or the other. Go with your preferred hand. If you honestly don't think that you prefer one hand or the other, just pick one. It really doesn't make that big of a difference. So how do we fill that into the spreadsheet? Let's talk about how you're actually getting that data collected. So looking at the spreadsheet, and by the way, I'm going to give you all of my data as well. So that's just one less person that you have to survey. You're welcome. So I'm right-handed. So if we look at the code for handedness, if you're right-handed is 1. So I'm going to put a 1 there. If If you were left-handed, you would put a 0. By the way, if you haven't changed where it says your name here, go ahead and change that to your name. Okay, let's move on to our next trait, which is earlobes, attached or unattached. So what we're looking at here is where the bottom of the ear, or basically where the ear attaches to the head. So in this picture, we call this an attached earlobe because where the ear attaches to the head is pretty much at the lowest point of the ear. On this ear, though, the ear comes down and then it goes back up before it attaches to the head. So we call that a detached earlobe because I've got this kind of dangly bit that falls below the attachment. Now, if you're working alone right now, you may want to go take a look in a mirror. When you're doing this, try not to yank on your ear too much. It can kind of screw things up. I'll show you mine in a second here. Might even be helpful to just have someone help you look at the side of your head and see what you have if you don't already know. So I know I said don't pull on the side of your head, but it's really difficult for me to do this on camera. Maybe we'll try this one. It's a little bit easier. I do have a little bit of a lobe. It does go down to the bottom here and it goes up a little bit before it attaches to my head. My lobe is very small, but I do have an earlobe. Does kind of go back up. So for me, I have detached or unattached earlobes. You'll have to decide for yourself what you've got. If it's close, just take your best guess. That's really what we're doing here, is just taking kind of our best guesses at these things. If you don't get 100% correct, that's okay. I still just need you to get some data of some kind. So like I said, mine were unattached, so that's a 0. Put a 0 there, and we're good. Next up is tongue rolling. How do you do that? Make like a taco or like a straw with your tongue. That's what tongue rolling is. If you end up looking something more like this, you probably can't really roll your tongue. And so you would be a 0 there. For me, I can roll my tongue, so I am a 1. You decide what you are for yourself. Cheek dimples. I know that you guys don't like to smile sometimes. Some of you don't like to smile very much, but you gotta smile for this and see if you get any kind of a kind of divot in your cheek. Now, I kind of have maybe a tiny bit of something right there, but not much. These people have really distinct dimples, as we can see on screen, and you might have something that looks kind of like that. You decide for yourself. I think I kind of had these, but I don't really think that's a dimple. I don't think I have dimples. Maybe I do. I'm going to say I don't. I think that I have smooth cheeks. So let's move on to freckles. Okay, so this girl has a lot of freckles, and freckles can kind of show up in a couple different ways. I have some things on my face, so for instance, kind of like these dots by my eye there, are not really freckles. You'll see some things like that. I also have one on my neck here. That's just kind of a dot. It's not really a freckle. It's kind of just like a birthmark. Those aren't freckles. Okay. What freckles are is usually when you're out in the sun and instead of getting like a nice, smooth, even tan, it ends up kind of freckled, speckled like this. This might be one that shows up differently in the summertime and in the wintertime. In the summertime, I get quite a few freckles kind of on my face. Some people have freckles all over the place, like entire face, arms, everything. I pretty much just get them right here. So you may be someone like that as well. Right now, I don't have too many of them because I haven't been in the sun so much. But yeah, in like August or something, I'd have a decent number of freckles. So I would say that I do. So if you get freckles at all ever, I don't care whether you have them right now, if you ever get freckles, you will put a 1 there. I do get freckles, so I'll put a 1 there. Next up is a cleft chin. So is your chin smooth, or does it have some kind of like a crease or a bump in it, or a divot, I guess, not so much a bump, but the opposite of a bump. These guys both have really good ones. When you're doing this, so an important thing real quick in knowing how to do a survey is knowing what people are going to do wrong and how to correct that. So what you might be doing right now is like flexing your chin and like going like this. Don't do that. For one, don't flex your chin because it's going to screw it up. It's going to make it look funny. Don't do that. And you can't really feel it very well, I don't think. If I really press into my chin, I can kind of feel like a divot in there. But what you want to do is just relax it, look in the mirror, and see if you see any kind of a divot. For me, I don't see one. So I have a smooth chin. Okay. Hairline shape. We're looking for a widow's peak or no widow's peak here. A widow's peak is when the hair kind of comes down to a point. Usually the point is pretty much at the middle of the face, middle of the forehead. I definitely have one of those. You can see kind of got a little bit of a point there. If you've got any kind of bangs or hair that kind of comes over the top of your head, you're going to have to pull your hair back like that and see what you've got. I've got a little bit of one, a little tiny baby widow's peak right there. If you're surveying a bald guy, this might be a little bit difficult to do. You may have to just ask him, back in the day, did you have a widow's peak? Maybe he knows. Sometimes you'll see people with receding hairlines, so they'll have kind of big bald patches right here. So just use your best judgment. Does it look like they have some kind of a point in roughly the middle of their head like that? All right, yep, we're good there. Let's keep moving on. All right, little finger. For this one, you're going to put your fingers together like this, and we really just want to look kind of at the top bit of the finger right here and determine whether we think it kind of bends or not. And it would bend kind of in that way. So they're bending like, I guess I should say, well, when you hold them this way, they kind of bend away from each other. So we can see the difference between where my pinkies are touching here and the gap that they have between them up here. I would call my pinkies bent. Now in the picture, this girl has really, I think it's, oh, that's not a girl. I always thought that was a girl. I just realized it's a beard back there. That's definitely a guy. I always thought that was a ponytail or something. Huh. Anyway, this person has really bent fingers, and this person has really straight pinky fingers. You determine what you have. Now, this is one where, remember I was mentioning how if you have a broken finger, your finger is going to be bent all weird to the side. Pinky fingers are really common fingers to break. So if you talk to someone who has broken a pinky finger, or if you have broken a pinky finger, don't look at that one. If it's bent because it had been broken, look at one. If they have one that they didn't break, look at the one that hadn't been broken and just kind of look at it and determine whether you think it would be straight or not. Use your best judgment again here. For me, I do have a bent pinky finger. Slide that over. Okay. Next up, we've got mid-digital hair. Now, this is one that is easy to screw up, so make sure you are paying attention to the video here. A way that I like to correct people is pretend you're punching something, right? Now, the surface of your fingers that you were just punching with is not the surface we're talking about. Instead, we want to kind of unfold our fists, and we're talking this part of your fingers right here. So not where your rings would go, but the next one over, the middle of your digit, the middle chunk of your finger, okay? So we want to look at those and see if we have any hair along there. Now, I find that it usually shows up most on the ring finger. You may see it elsewhere, but I definitely have the most on my ring finger. I have a little bit on my pinky, and I think I might have one on my middle finger. I don't really have any on my index finger. I find that most people, if they have it, it'll show up the most on their ring finger. Could be anywhere. Even if you just find one hair on one of your fingers, count yourself as having mid-digital hair, okay? So for me, I do have it. I have a 1 there. Okay, next one is eye dominance. This is another one that can be a little bit tricky. So there's a couple of tests that we need to perform here. Now, first off, I'd like to say if you're someone who has glasses and maybe you have a prescription and one of your eyes is stronger than the other one and one is weaker and you know that, that's cool, but that does not necessarily determine eye dominance. So we still need to do this test to figure out which eye is your dominant eye. So the way we're going to do that is we'll look at the triangle hand test first. First thing you want to do is make like a little triangle with your hand, about maybe baseball size or something like that, and find an object on the other side of the room. I'm going to go ahead and use my clock over there. Let's turn like that. So I'm going to use my clock. Use any medium to smallish sized object. You might use a doorknob on the other side of the room, or a picture, or I don't know, a cat, or I don't know, something on the other side of the room, far away from you. So I'm looking at the object on the other side of the room. I've got my little triangle here, and I'm going to put my triangle out at arm's length. I do not want to bring my triangle up to my face. Put it out at arm's length with both eyes open. I'm going to find that object and center it in my little hand hole thing. Both eyes open. Now, it's centered. Do not move your head. Do not move your body. The only thing I want you to do is close one eye at a time and see what happens. See how that object moves between your hands. So for me, for instance, when I close my left eye and I'm only looking through my right eye, the clock is still centered in my hands. On the other hand, when I close my right eye and I'm only looking through the left, the image shifts way over to the side. That tells me that my right eye is my dominant eye. That's the eye that I dominantly look through. Okay. The other test that you can use, some people struggle with this one, with the triangle thing. By the way, with the triangle thing, people are going to move their hands. People are going to move their heads. People are going to, when they first put the triangle up, they're going to want to look through an eye. Make sure they don't do that. Okay. Both eyes center on triangle, and then just close one eye at a time without moving your head or your hands. And also make sure your hands are at arm's length, not right up to your face. Okay. Now, if that test is still too difficult, the other easy one is pretend you're a pirate. Hand them an imaginary telescope and tell them to look at that object over there and see which eye they put their telescope up to. For me, I always put my telescope up to my right eye because that's my dominant eye. Okay, so if those tests disagree, if you've done both and they disagree, go with the triangle test. That one's more accurate. But the telescope test is kind of good if the triangle one, if you're struggling with that. So I am right eye dominant, so I'm going to put a 1 there. Okay, double jointed fingers. Can you do any of this weird stuff? It doesn't count if you have to manually force your finger into a funny position. Doesn't count. Only if you can do it kind of on your own does it count. All right. People will say, well, I can't do that with my fingers, but look what I can do with my elbow. Look what I can do with my shoulder. Look what I can. Don't really care. Cool, but don't care. Double jointed fingers are this and only this. Okay. I am not double jointed. Looking at those pictures makes my hands hurt. So I'm going to put a 0 there. Next up is Hitchhiker's Thumb. So what you want to do is tell people, give me a thumbs up, and look at what their thumb does. And here's the thing. If you have a Hitchhiker's Thumb, so I have a Hitchhiker's Thumb, it kind of bends back that direction over here. I can make it artificially straight by just kind of straightening it up like that. So try to make sure that whoever you're surveying doesn't do that. Yeah. Make sure their thumb is kind of extended as far as it can go, right? Other things are, make sure we're looking at the back surface, like where the nail is on the thumb. So what I mean is here, this surface is really curved. Here, the surface is really straight. This person has a straight thumb. The back of this person, well, the pad of this person's thumb is curved, right? But that's just how fingers are. They're pretty much always going to be curved. So we're looking kind of where the nail is. So I have a hitchhiker's or a bent thumb, so I'm going to be a 1. Hand clasping. Whoops, went too far. Hand clasping. Put your hands together like this, and you want to kind of see which thumb is on top. For me, my left thumb always ends up on top. Now, when you do this, it's kind of interesting. I'm trying to tilt the camera down. Usually when you do this, if you switch your hands, it feels really uncomfortable in the other way. Now, if you have people doing this and switching their hand directions, make sure they're not just switching their thumbs, okay? You need to switch all of your fingers. So all of your fingers switch. to be intertwined. One of them will probably feel more comfortable than the other. For me, and I should say this, if people are switching back and forth a lot, they may say, well, now they both feel weird, like if you're thinking about it too hard. If you start thinking about it too hard, have them just shake their hands out, I missed. Shake their hands out, put them together, and just go with wherever they land. For me, my left thumb always lands on top. So, hand clasping for me, left on top. Next up is arm folding. Look at this bouncer guy, or pretend you're just throwing a temper tantrum and cross your arms like this and see which kind of elbow ends up on top. So for me, this one is the one that ends up on top. That's my left. If you try to do it the other way, sometimes it's like your brain won't even let you do it the other way. For me, I can, but it's really uncomfortable to have my right arm on top. I don't like that. So left arm always ends up on top. Similar to the hand clasping. If someone's sitting here trying to fold their arms and they're like, I don't know, I can't even do it anymore. Shake your arms out, fold them, and you can probably do it, and you're just go with wherever it lands. For me, left arm is still on top. So arm folding, left on top, I'm a 0. And last, but maybe least, is your toes. I don't like feet, probably because I have this type of foot. What we're looking for here, there's 3 different ways that this can show up, but we've kind of got to make it form into 2. You'll either have your second toe longer than your big toe, or it's not. So in this case, the second toe is shorter, and in this case, the second toe is about the same. So that's our 2, is either it's longer or it's not. It's one of those other 2 on the sides. Okay. So for me, I've got a 1 there. All right. So I will see if I can zoom this out a little bit so that, nope, I can't zoom it out, but you can rewind if you need to find, there we go. Now I can zoom out. Need a little bit more. There we go. Now you can see all my numbers. So there's all my numbers. There's all my data. Hopefully you have a better understanding now of what the traits are, what they mean, and how to do the survey. So at this point, all you have to do before the next class is go find 5 more humans and survey them. It can be mom, dad, brother, sister, aunt, uncle, cousin, neighbor. You can even talk to your teachers. Your teachers, at least in this hallway, will know what their traits are. They've seen this before. You may need to help them a little bit remember what some of them mean. But yeah, any 5 humans, talk to nice people. Don't go talking to random people on the street. And I know your siblings may not always seem like humans, but I promise they are. So get 5 more data points collected, and we'll see you for class next time. Let me know if you have any questions. Good luck.